Capital Views is sponsored by Northrim Bank, Alaska Oil and Gas Association, ConocoPhillips, and Linden.
Hi, I'm Tim Bradner with Alaska Legislative Digest, and welcome to Capitol Views. And thank you, Joelle Hall, for joining us today. Joelle is the CEO of the Alaska AFL-CIO. And thanks for being here, Joelle.
Thank you very much. Very glad to be here again.
Joelle, just to start out, maybe you could refresh us on just what AFL-CIO is. I mean, you're the veteran organization for organized labor for Alaska. Maybe you could describe what it is and how many organized labor groups belong to AFL?
Happy to. Yeah, the Alaska AFL-CIO stands for the American Federation of Labor Congress of Industrial Organizations. We are an association of about 50 unions in Alaska, representing about 50,000 working people. We are a trade association of most of Alaska's unions. And so I am the elected president of that organization. And so I serve those union leaders and their members. And the Alaska AFL-CIO's job is to work on legislative work as well as political campaigns to try to pass pro-worker legislation, stop anti-worker legislation, and then support and elect candidates who support our values.
Well, Joelle, it's good, legislature is underway and it could be an interesting session, interesting on the national level as well. What's in terms of the state issues, without maybe going into really a lot of detail, what's on your plate for the session in terms of things that are going to be sort of ongoing, maybe not near-term bills and things like that, but just broad issues. What are you concerned about?
The broad issues that we would be working on are the things we've been working on for a number of years now: public education funding, retirement security, of course, democracy issues, any kind of attempts to tamper or meddle with people's right to vote. We would be involved in that. Unions are a democratic institution, and we believe in protecting democratic processes in our state as well. We're very interested in development, obviously oil and gas development, anything that's going on in the legislature where that would be, big projects. We're very interested in that, kind of hoping there's a real geo bond this year. We'd love to see that. We'd like to see some construction and some matches made on some of the federal investment that still have to be made to build Alaska's infrastructure and to keep Alaska moving forward.
Joelle, just what comes to mind is the recent Social Security bill that passed on the national level.
Yeah.
There's a part of that that has to do with employer meetings with employees. And I know that this has been an issue for Alaska labor to try to get some legislation or some regulations to uh, limit the ability of employers to talk to employees in closed meetings. Maybe you could explain that and what the new federal legislation does.
Okay, we got three things. The Social Security bill that you referenced relates to government pension offset and windfall elimination program. So that's the Social Security thing that doesn't have anything to do with what we refer to as captive audience meetings. We passed a ballot initiative this last election cycle, which had a provision in it to protect a worker from these types of mandatory meetings. And I will elaborate a little bit on that, and then I'll go into a recent NLRB decision that relates to that particular action. So our ballot initiative, what it said was an employer can have whatever meeting they want. That's completely their prerogative. It's their First Amendment right. But it is also the First Amendment right of a worker to not be subjected to the speech of their employer if the speech has nothing to do with their work. So, for example, you run a gas station and you would like to have a meeting, hold your workers captive, and talk to them about your beliefs about space aliens or anything of the sort. You as an employer have the right to have the meeting, but you really What our ballot initiative said is, if that worker doesn't want to be in the meeting, they can go back to work and you can't penalize them. That's all our ballot initiative said in that regard. So everybody's First Amendment rights are fully intact here. And the worker has the right to go back to work rather than be subjected to speech that doesn't relate to their job. Now, after that, like literally days after our ballot initiative was certified, the National Labor Relations Board produced a decision that said captive audience meetings, which is what these are referred to as, are on their face unconstitutional. So what that means now is that until the NLRB either reverses itself, which it might, and a Trump NLRB might reverse themselves, currently that type of meeting where you require your workers to sit there and listen to something other than a conversation about their job, it's not a safety meeting. Like, we're not talking about safety meetings or about, your insurance plan. We're talking about things outside of that scope. Those meetings are unconstitutional currently.
And so the new Social Security Act does a lot to reinforce the retirement opportunities for public and local government and state employees to some extent.
Well, it's really complicated because right now, Alaska public employees don't pay into Social Security. And so they don't, what this would do in short is, if a teacher, for example, who does not pay into Social Security, had 40 quarters before they came to the job, under the previous law, they would be penalized and disallowed everything they had earned under their previous 40 quarters because they had a public pension, which also, by the way, Alaskans don't have a pension as of right now. So they were penalized, and really importantly, it is their heirs. So my father was a public school teacher. My mother had paid Social Security. And when my mom died, my dad was denied her Social Security, even though it was the larger, because he had a public employee pension. So he was penalized twice. Denied his rightful share of his earned Social Security, and then denied my mother's Social Security because he had a pension. So it straightens those two things out.
Well, that's a big deal because the opportunity to reinforce pensions for public employees and stop the outflow of public employees leaving the state is really important. Um, in terms of Joelle, maybe briefly in a brief time we have left, could you any comment on workforce outflow and the ability to try to retain workers in Alaska?
Well, we talked about it just a second ago. Construction is up in Alaska. That's great. We will try to train and build as many workers as we can. But in terms of public services, if you read the budget, you'll see that every single department is drowning in vacancies. And they're drowning in vacancies because the state of Alaska can't compete on wages and benefits. And we need to fix that.
That's very important. Which, well, we are out of time. We'll have an opportunity to talk more, and I appreciate your taking a few minutes with us.